The word why. What a curious word. The kind of word that can make us cringe, feel defensive, or even distant. But you know, sometimes why is the key. A key that can unlock so much to our lives. Join me as we explore the why with fascinating contributors to the world. Those that entertain us, inform us, teach us about life, and if we're lucky, inspire the next in all of us. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and welcome to HeadRoom, a production of Rainlight and co-produced by Old Soul. Let's go. We are spending time today with Gerry Sigal. You may not know him, but you sure know and recognize the buildings that have had his fingerprints all over them. I'm really excited about this conversation. I've been blessed to speak with some incredible people over the last decade, and I can't think of somebody else that has been as interesting, Gerry, as you. So I say that as a compliment.
Wait, you might say differently.
I might, huh? People will know and they'll get a sense of you and your connection, obviously, to the Twin Towers in Madison Square Garden and these iconic buildings and the stories, both good, bad, and an understatement. I want to get to know the man, Gerry, and your energy for life. And I want to go back to Brighton Beach.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah, paint the picture. I want to know what Brighton Beach was when you were a young boy.
Number one, as you know, I was born in 1943. Okay? I lived in a 4-story tenement walk-up. Do you know what air conditioning was? It was when you put your mattress on the fire escape. That's Brighton Beach. And it was a great community.
Describe what it was like to live in a tenement, because I think in 2022, that's
tenement. What is that, right?
Yeah, that's an era gone by, right? We may have seen that in movies, or how do we understand? Like, what's the flavor of that outside of the air conditioning component? Like, what are the families like? What's the culture like? The community, the engagement with others that were a part of that.
It's a good question. If you didn't have heat in the winter, you banged on the pipes. When I was 15, the older people had these wire-rim shopping carts, and this was a struggle to get them up. So I decided that watching these old ladies do that, I'm going to go over to the 6 grocery stores in Brighton Beach and say, look, I'm going to deliver the bags, and you pay me per bag, and my guys will get a tip. Worked out fine. I got 10 cents a bag. Are you ready? And my guys got a tip for 10 cents. I wound up having close to 32 guys working for me at 15. Does that answer your story?
It does, but so where does that come from? Not every kid has that.
No.
So where was this? Was this early on? Talk about your parents. Talk about the sort of the family structure.
We're first-generation Americans. My father came from Palestine. My mother came from Poland. They made hats in the Lower East Side in the sweatshops. Okay? They had no money at all. I became interested in changing what I was doing. My typical thing, I had a pair of Converse sneakers. I remember what it was. Had a hole in it. And I showed it to my father. And he says, put a piece of cardboard in your sneaker. And that's when I changed. That one story, it really affected me. To put a piece of cardboard in the sneaker to cover the hole.
What was the message to you?
Go get a job and do something at 15. So I got this job, delivering groceries at 15 years old.
Did you think of yourself as, I always think it's interesting for young people and kids. I think they just know what they know. Their environment is their environment. They don't think about rich and poor or if they have resources or not. How did you think of yourself as a kid?
We never thought we were poor, even though dinner for almost every night consisted of scrambled eggs and toast. So, but you didn't know you were
almost
poor.
Every night.
Yeah, almost every night, except for Shabbos or Friday. Then you would have fish or meat. Yeah, because there was no money. So it was, but you still didn't think that you were poor because at least you had food on your plate, whether it was just scrambled eggs and toast. So it was really very interesting. Didn't realize any of that really changed until I got older and did what I was doing.
And you had siblings, correct?
Yeah, a brother who passed away from cancer, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day at 58 years old, very young. So I continue on. And then, as you know, you spoke to my wife. I'm sure she told you, Ellen and I met when we were 15 years old.
Yeah, it sounds like 15 was quite a year for you.
You want to see the picture?
Yeah, if you've got it.
I actually had the picture when we met at 15.
I want to talk about, if I want to stay in Brighton Beach for a few more moments, let's talk about kids. Let's talk about the world that we live in today, Gerry. Sadly, it does feel like we're going backwards to some degree. We're banning books. There are all kinds of things that are going on that I don't think people would have thought in 2022 we would be doing. And it has us looking at those in our classrooms and our communities that may look different than we do. And I think it's birthing some interesting conversations, or at least I hope that it is. Talk about what it was like
Brighton Beach in the mid, 40s and 50s, and talking about cultures and communities and neighborhoods where cultures were defining communities.
It's very interesting. Everybody was friends. You played ball together, you played stickball, and you did everything together. And it was very, very different. There was no animosity between anybody. And even though culturally we were all a very mixed neighborhood, but yet all of us got together and been together. So it really, and I really miss a lot of that. I miss seeing that even with my own grandchildren now. But it's just not the same. I mean, we were really close, all of us. It's amazing.
What is Brighton Beach like today for you?
You ready? It's a Russian community. You got all the you had the Russian signs and you got the Russian push carts on the street. So it's very interesting how it changed. It was a Jewish and Italian neighborhood. So it was either the pizza or the fish or the hot dogs or the knishes. But now it's all Russian food, and it's so different. But yet you can't buy an apartment under $1 million there now. And don't forget, and then in those days I was 50 yards from the ocean. So
you were 50 yards from the ocean.
Right.
So what was a young Gerry Sigal dreaming about looking out at the ocean at that stage? Obviously, you were building an empire, having 32 employees delivering groceries.
No, not building an empire. So you're going to love this one. So 2 things that I did besides doing the groceries. I had beach chairs. I would rent 30 beach chairs on the weekends on the beach at 15. And I store them in my friend's garage.
So how did you get the money? So did you get the money from the groceries to buy the chairs, and then that's kind of how you?
Now you know what you're talking about.
I'm getting it. Let's go into business, Gerry.
So you got the picture?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So I rented beach chairs on the weekend, and then I did the groceries. And the Converse sneakers affected me.
The Converse sneakers.
Think about that. A hole in my sneaker, and my parents didn't have the money to get me another pair of sneakers. And my father said, put a piece of cardboard in your sneaker. And that's it. I said, I'm buying my own sneakers, Mel.
So basically you take charge of your own life in that regard.
Which is what I did. Yeah, totally. One of the toys that I like, or games I like, was a game called Lincoln Logs. You know what that was?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I got into Lincoln Logs big time, building stuff, cabins and all that. And that really interested me in the construction business. That was my start.
That was the start.
Yeah, Lincoln Logs.
How did the relationship with you and your dad change since that Converse? Obviously he's passed.
Yeah, they were refugees and didn't make a difference. I was having a few bucks in my pocket. I wasn't asking for money, and we just had a happy life.
Were you expected to contribute what you were making to the family?
No. They had no interest in that at all. And their big interest was education and school. So
that says something about them.
Yeah, no, it did. They really, and they cared about people, and they were charitable, and did a lot of things as much as they could be. But it's a different life. It's a life I try to lead now. So that's how I got interested in construction.
Lincoln Logs.
Lincoln Logs. Isn't that great?
That is amazing. Yeah. I mean, what kids haven't? I mean, they still exist today.
Think any kids. That's a good question. I don't think anybody has it anymore.
Oh, they do.
You got Lego. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, you have Legos. You've got now, electronics that are tied to it, right? Yeah. So, okay. So you're 15. You meet your wife. Obviously, all these sort of changes are going on.
The love of my life.
The love of your life. And if people could see your face, I think we could all aspire to that. Okay. So you're 15. You're getting a sense, or maybe a sensibility of yourself and what you can do. I mean, not that you're renting beach chairs means you're going to go, I don't know, create an empire or anything like that. But I think a sense of confidence. Did you feel confidence growing in your ability to trust your gut on the things that you wanted to do and pursue?
No, that's a very good point. I had a teacher in the 6th grade. Her name was Miss Puglisi, who said to Gerry, when you sneeze, God should only bless you with more brains. What does that tell you? You don't think I left an image on me? Imagine that. That really affected my life.
Hearing that.
Yeah. I had a hard time in school.
You had a hard time?
Hard time, yeah.
What was difficult in school?
I was not a good student. I had a hard time taking tests. And like I said, this teacher, Miss Puglisi, said, you should only have more brains. Okay? Which affected me. And yet I have 32 guys working for me. Think about that.
Like something's working.
Yeah. So what happened is very interesting is that I went on to high school, went to Lincoln High School in Brooklyn, and I had a scholarship to play football for another small college. And the last game of the year, I dislocated my shoulder. And those days, you just ripped up the piece of paper. Now you're in trouble. Now you need a job. So I decided, because I like my Lincoln Logs so much, that I'm going to go into the construction business. So I went to the first construction company that's the closest to the BMT subway in Brooklyn. And it was Tishman. So I went up there and I said, look, I'm looking for a job. Do you have any openings? I was 17 years old and I lied. I told him I was 18 because those days you had to be 18 to get a job. So he said, yeah, you know what? We still have an opening. We have an opening in the mailroom. And I said, fine, $40 a week.
So you're the classic mailroom story. They do exist.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We have great mailrooms. And I was good at it. I was so good. They asked me to work on next job in 6 months was to work on a job site. So that was the beginning of my career with Tishman. Okay.
But see, that's what's fascinating to me, right? Like, how many young people have the confidence to be able to think and understand sort of the relative position in life and still see opportunity, right? And so you're there for any job at all. You get in the mailroom, and it sounds like you're a happy, at least productive worker enough that in 6 months they're putting you on a job site.
Right. I went to work for Tishman in June 1960. So that tells you how old I'm going to be 79 in 2 weeks. All right. I've been in the business 62 years. So let me start back from that. I think it's important to truly understand this. And so I went to work for Tishman, and when I was with them by about a couple of years, and they said, Gerry, you're too good to be in the mailroom. Why don't you go work on one of the job sites? And that's what I did, working in Silver Towers on West House and West Broadway. That doesn't mean anything to you. And I worked my way up as a superintendent and assistant superintendent, which that meant in those days, you got the coffee for everybody. Okay. And so I became the superintendent. So
back to getting groceries, right?
Yeah. That was good. At that point, then they asked me to go out to the job site on Madison Square Garden, which was the building called Two Penn Plaza, Madison Square Garden, where the superintendent was there. I've now working for Tishman a long time. And the guy had a heart attack, and my old boss, John Tishman, said, Gerry, can you take it over? I said, of course. Not a problem. So I take over the job, and I finished that. So I finished, it was 1968, I finished Two Penn Plaza and the Garden. And then my next assignment, they asked me, Gerry, how about going to New Orleans to build the biggest building in the city of New Orleans? You get in this picture, right?
Yeah.
So I go to New Orleans. So I do build the biggest building in the city of New Orleans, called 1010 Common. And I finished that. And then my next assignment, they said they wanted me to go back to Newark Airport and do Continental's airline terminal. And then something came up and they asked me, Gerry, I need you to go to the World Trade Center. And we'll make you in charge of all the interiors in the building, in building one, which is the South building.
The South Tower, right?
Yeah. So that's what I did. So I went there.
And when you take your dad up there when it was still unfinished?
Oh, yeah. Oh, wait, now you're going, okay.
It's my job to do a little bit of research here, right?
Oh, did you? Okay, so what happened, I took Pop around, and Pop would always look at me and says, you should be a plumber. And the reason you should be a plumber is that the toilets will always break. So I take Pop to the World Trade Center.
Job security, right?
And he says, oh, my God, he hits his head. Look at all these toilets. You know what you could be if you were a plumber? He didn't understand it. And that was the whole thing. And we go back home to dinner with the family. And I said, Pop, so what'd you think? He says, could you imagine if you were the plumber, what you would be doing?
What was that like for you? I mean, I would imagine, fathers and sons have unique relationships, right?
He was a refugee,
Different times.
Yeah. He couldn't even write his name. He used to write it with an X. So, but he meant well. And every penny he earned, he gave it to mom to buy food and stuff like that. So
you think I would imagine he was proud of you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question about it. No question about it. So I wanted them being in charge of the building, doing all the interiors and all that for the South building. Did that well, and then I finished that. I think it must have been finished New Orleans 71. So I finished the World Trade Center 74.
I was going to say 73, 74, right?
Yeah, 74. Right. And so they said to me, Gerry, we got a choice. Do you want to do Ren Center, which is General Motors headquarters in Detroit?
Oh, in Detroit. That's right.
Yeah. Or you want to go to Washington, open Tishman's office in Washington. I said, I want to go to Washington. So that's how I got to Washington. And I built the first building in Georgetown. I actually have, over the years now, built 13 buildings in Georgetown alone. When I finished that in the end of 1977, they said the next job for me was to go to build Epcot World for Disney. And then I realized, you're going to find this very interesting. I couldn't move because my kids, I got my oldest child went to 3 kindergartens because of the moves we went around the country and stuff that Tish and I did. And I realized there was a problem. So I told my boss, I can't move. I want to stay in Washington. And he tells me point blank, he says, Sigal, everybody's replaceable. And it's only the inconvenience caused at the time of replacement. You either get your last and down to Orlando or go find a job. So I came home that night, tears in my eyes, and look at my wife and says, Ellen, how much do we have? And she says, we have $2,214. We're going in business. And that's how we started.
That's how you started.
$2,214. We decided to go in business. And then you know the story about my wife. She becomes the first woman commercial real estate in America in 1977.
Yeah.
And she had her own company too, as you know. So besides doing what she does now. And the rest became history at then. And then when my youngest son was going to school, we noticed he had an issue. And so we took him to what they call the lab school and in Kingsbury Center to check out what's the issue. And then they came up with the thing that Michael has attention deficit dyslexia. I said, really? How about testing me? Guess what?
You were struggling in the same areas.
Exactly.
Yeah. But they didn't know that back then.
No, in Brooklyn, are you kidding? You thought you were dumb. Yeah. So that's, and then what I learned was always to have a good secretary who could write everything out for me. And then we went into business and the rest is history.
HeadRoom is produced by Old Soul, a one-stop marketing agency that understands the power of brand and nuance. Reach out to my guy Matt at Old Soul and supercharge your brand and content strategy. That's Old Soul. Shoot Matt a note at aoldsoul.com. That's AOLDSOUL.com. And now, back to our guest.
What a fork in the road. We've got Epcot, right, which is iconic for people in that regard. Right. You make the tough decision as a dad, as a husband, right? You're going to pivot with a little over $2,000 in your pocket.
Well, what happens then is that I did a very small job for a client. I built an office building, and the client asked me to come back and finish up some things at the building that he wanted done. And that's how I basically started. So what also happened when instead I didn't have a laborer, I didn't have a project manager. So my car became the garbage. I would open my hood, put a wag thing in the back, and then I go look for a construction company's trailer and I dump all the stuff in their trailer.
Wait, so I'm so confused. So, okay, what were you getting from their trailers?
No, I was dumping the garbage from the job I was building for this guy because I had no money to pay somebody to come get it.
To come get it?
Yes. So I dumped it there.
I guess what it makes me think about, Gerry, is this internal itch that you scratch, it seems like throughout your history around educating, being sort of aware. I mean, you know, the story about your dad talking about toilets, right? And the value of being a plumber. And yet then I'd love for you to share with the audience what you did when you heard about schools in the DC area, I believe, where the bathrooms needed renovating. And you said, well, wait a minute, let's fix this. And it's just, it feels like there's that, look, you're a businessman, you've been incredibly successful, but it hasn't been at the expense of others is what my experience of learning about you has been. And even in our exchanges over the last couple of weeks, talk about that story, because that says to me so much more about you than your accomplishments, that story of the schools.
But I was always coming from this city, coming from this, I call it the streets of Brooklyn. You realize everything was very different.
Oh, no, I get it. It was not the suburbs.
No. So I read this in the Washington Post having breakfast, and it said the kids can't go to the bathrooms in the schools. The girls had to go from 9 to 11. The boys could go from 11 to 1. I said, that's got to be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So I go over to the first school, which happened to be in the area where I live. And I said to the principal, show me what's going on. She takes me in there and shows me, see, the toilets aren't fixed, nothing's working. I got to put girls in one bathroom and all that. And I said, wait a second. This is ridiculous. So I go back to my office. I got a couple of my guys around. And I said, okay, we're going to make a difference. Let's go fix the school. So we call up a couple of our subcontractors. Here's what's going to happen. We're going to fix the plumbing. We're going to fix the toilets. We're going to fix lighting. And then we're going to take the kids and have them paint the stalls so that they will stay there, not get in trouble. They'll be happy. So we started doing one school. Next thing you know, I'm doing 14 schools. Okay? Out of my pocket.
I was going to ask you who paid for that.
Out of my pocket. And then the school system in those days, when I got about to the 11th school, says, you're doing this, which is very nice. But now what are we going to do now? Because you're putting a high quality toilets in, high quality fixtures and all that. So I call up the manufacturer, I'm American, and I said, hey, I got a problem. I got to take care of the schools. They said, it's a great idea. We'll send you the extras so everybody has enough supplies to fix all the bathrooms. It was a win-win to everybody. And the cost was out of my pocket. Yes, it was.
But I can see on your face just the pride from that project.
No, I believe in giving back. Number one, it's always been very important to me. Teaching young kids, being a mentor. We did all kinds of things like that in Washington, and still continue to this day to do that.
Tell me what drives you, right? Because there are a lot of people that are in your shoes, you know, on the verge of being 79 and, dare I say, approaching 80, respectfully. That would say, "Oh, good. I hope you got a good golf game."
At 79, would you believe that? I had my 11th lesson today.
Oh, you did?
I said, sure. I mean,
straight from the golf course.
Yes. That's why we're wearing a hat.
I like it. What keeps you excited when you get up in the morning? What are the things that now, given what you've accomplished, that give you the kind of energy that even when you're tired, you say, I got to write this down. I got to call somebody. I need to think about this.
Well, it's still, it's very interesting. Give you an idea. Go back about 15 years ago. There was 4 of us in the contracting business. I said, we're having a problem getting skilled labor. So I said, and it was in the city those days, Washington was very difficult to be getting workers from. So we said, there's no vocational schools in Washington, D.C. So why don't we set up a school and teach the kids from the inner city how to be carpenters, electricians, and plumbers. We're still doing it today, averaging 225 kids who are
still today.
Oh, absolutely. And guess who funds it? The 4 of us.
The 4 of you.
Yeah, teaching these kids. And so we've been doing it 15 years now.
How many kids have gone through the program? Do you know?
Oh, that's a good question. It's up to 200 a year now, 225 roughly. I was in the early years, it was about 15, 16. So I have to figure it out for you. I'd say maybe a couple thousand, 2,000. Yeah, easily. And then you hire the kids also, put them on your jobs. So you're taking kids from the inner city, teach them how to build a house. And it's the best thing that ever happened to them in their life.
It sounds like more people need to know about that program.
Well, the city knows about it, and they might do something eventually about it. And Washington's very good about this stuff. So, but like I said, it's a vocational school system they don't have.
Take me back, because I think it's interesting, and I'll let you bring up personalities if you want. But take me back to the construction business, or the scene, maybe is a better way to put it, the construction scene in the 70s and 80s in New York.
Okay. Number one, I'm a guy from Brooklyn, so I had no fear. Okay.
No fear.
I wasn't affected by that scene. So I never had a problem.
Was it as competitive as we've seen? Obviously, Trump being there.
New York is very competitive. No question about it.
Any clashes or exchanges or projects with Trump and what we see in the press, was it as accurate?
No. What you see in the press is definitely accurate. And I never would work for Trump anyway. But I was already out of New York when he came around. So I left New York in 74. But the scene was very difficult in those days, dealing with the big boys. And but I had no fear. So
you had no fear.
No, I'm from Brooklyn.
I do. Fear. I would be remiss if I didn't ask about it, only because I think your perspective is, there's only one of you in this regard. And obviously there was a story in the Washington Post, days after 9/11.
Right.
How after so many years have you reconciled the tragedy of 9/11? At the end of the day, we're talking just beams and, like construction materials that put together a building, but a building has stories. A building is the platform to take a dad up 110 stories to look out, right? In retrospect, how do you understand it? How do you think about it and the power of what you do and what it means to people and lives that grow in their experiences within these buildings?
That's a very good point. Number one, I spent, as you know, I told you 5 years there. Okay. So the tears in my eyes took me 2.5 years to see the buildings, the site, not the buildings. But the other thing that happened too, my closest friend became Larry Silverstein. You know who that is, don't you? Larry's the man who bought the buildings 6 weeks before they went down. And Larry and I have been friends ever since. And so we know a lot about it. We're tied in together. We see each other all the time. And so it's a personal joy to me to see what's going on down there. But it's also a horrible thing to see all the people that died and everything that happened, and it's sad. And it does affect my life tremendously, going downtown. So
to this day.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've been very fortunate besides for that building. I never had any other buildings that had an issue. So I've been very fortunate. As you know, we built other places, right? We built
absolutely
5,000 houses in Israel, a couple thousand, in fact.
5,000 houses in Israel.
All right. There are other things that I did that we never talk about. Okay,
no, I know. I mean, you built so many. You that's like I said at the opening. You've had your fingerprints on so many structures of all shapes and sizes.
Different things. So when I went to New Orleans, when I went to my own business, the owner from New Orleans asked me to please come down and open an office to take care of his buildings. Okay. Then I got a call from the Middle East, from the Israeli office. Gerry, we need you to come to Israel. And I said, what are you talking about? I thought somebody was pulling my leg. He says, no, what's happening is the Russians are letting out all the Jewish people. We don't build enough houses. So you're laughing. So guess where I went?
Wow.
I went over to Israel, built 5,000 houses. They never used drywall. You know what drywall is, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
they never used drywall. Everything's built with cinder block and stucco. I brought drywall to Israel. And then from there, I got a call from Oleg Rosenberg in Siberia, and Belovo, which is a city south of Novosibirsk, which is the capital of Siberia. He says, my mother told me about you. You're going to love this story. I said, what do you mean, mother? My mother read about you in the newspapers in the Jerusalem Post, that you built houses in Israel. I need you to come to Russia to build houses for us. I says, okay. I said, Oleg, how are you going to build the houses? He says, we have the money. I said, okay, here's what you do, Oleg. Send me $100,000. And I got to remember, this is the 70s. $100,000 was big time money.
Might as well have been $1 million at that time.
Right, exactly. So you're going to love the story. I got a call from my bank. Hey, Gerry, we got $100,000 that came from Novosibirsk. You know what that is? I said, oh, shit, now I got to do something.
Now you got to do something.
So what happens with myself and my president at the time, we hired an architect called Shalom Branis, who's a great friend. And we said, we got to come up with a frost-proof type of house. So we went to Ryland Homes, and we worked out a house that you're laughing, that we came up with, that every house went on 2 containers. Now, picture the scene. They went from 2 containers in Baltimore to Leningrad. It wasn't St. Petersburg. And from Leningrad or St. Petersburg, it went in this Trans-Siberian Express to Belovo. And you only could build, because of the frost line there, you only could build from May into October. And so we started making the houses and prefabricated the houses in Maryland and sending them to Israel. To Russia, I'm sorry. Yep.
That's amazing.
So then the other offices, I talked to Philadelphia and a big office in Philadelphia a long time, and also in Baltimore. And I stepped back about 19 years ago and said, this is crazy. I'm just running all over.
Yeah, I don't think you step back. I mean, you step back maybe officially, but I don't get the sense that stepping back for you is what we would all consider stepping back. Let me ask you this, Gerry. What of all the structures, do you think there'll be one that, whether it's a story or it embodies something about you, your life, your upbringing, I don't think it has to be something like the South Tower of Madison Square Garden, to your point, or bringing drywall to Israel, right? Like, is there one that you just say, gosh, that's my favorite, or it means the most?
There's actually more than one that mean the most. One is definitely the World Trade Center. No question about it. Number 2 is I went to night school at NYU for 9.5 years, okay, to get my degree. Now, that was kind of tough. And I built the 3 buildings at West House and West Broadway called Silver Towers. I was the superintendent over there. And then I built the office, first building out of Washington for NYU. First building out of New York for NYU in Washington. That's one of the schools we have. I built that campus.
And why do those 2 in particular?
Because I went to night school at NYU. And NYU meant so much to me because they took me in. In those days, I think it was $175 of credit or something to go to school. And they took a kid who had terrible marks, who really did terrible in school, and I went to school there.
So they believed in you.
Oh yeah.
Why do you think they accepted you? Was it an interview? Was it the personality? Like, what was it about you?
No, I think they just, being in New York and those days, I think they just accepted a lot of kids to go to night school because that was that kind of community. And then I was picked as the distinguished, I think you probably don't know this either, distinguished alumni from NYU. And
you gave the commencement speech, didn't you?
Yes. Oh, so you do know that. Okay. I started off with, welcome to the home that Gerry built.
All right.
Are you proud of me?
I am proud of you, Gerry. I feel like I've known you for my whole life here. All right. So let's close with this.
Did I tell you about the project in Sacramento that I did also?
No, I didn't know you were out west. Look, they let you out west, Gerry. This is the story.
They let me pass the Hudson. Yes. Yeah. So another one of my close friends was doing a project out in Sacramento, got in trouble, and he asked me to go out there set up an office. So we did that also.
So talk with me a little bit. You touched on it briefly, and I want to be respectful, but I would imagine people that are listening would have caught this as well. You mentioned your friendship with Larry, who bought the Trade Center 6 weeks before 9/11. I can't fathom what that friendship has been like over the years. And if it's the kind of friendship where you don't have to express anything verbally, that it's in the eyes, it's in the shoulders, you just can't describe it, but there's a tone and texture to it that is just unique to you and Larry. And I'm wondering if you could describe, is it shared, are you sharing a glass of wine together? Are you having a cup of coffee? Like, what's that friendship like? Because I would imagine you lean into one another, or you have over the years, and that's been very reaffirming, or affirming, I should say.
Well, number one, you have to understand that Larry and his wife, Clara, and Ellen and I are very close. And since you know what my wife does, so the conversations go from construction to medical to everything you could possibly think of. It's a very close relationship. And it just, and we have names for each other. He's called Larala, I'm called Gerala. So we're very close. And it's quite a man. He's 92 years old. Look what he's still doing.
That's amazing. Tell me about, I would imagine there's a great sense of pride. I know that you were appointed by President Clinton to the United States Holocaust Memorial Council. So tell me about that experience in being appointed by President Clinton and what that means to you and your family.
It means a lot because we lost a lot of people during the Holocaust. My family and I had that opportunity. I got a presidential appointment with being in the Holocaust Museum. It was phenomenal. I was very involved. I wound up doing a lot of the exhibit space. And then we built the special building for scholars outside of Washington, which is another big building. They asked me to take it over and just run that also. And they wouldn't let me resign. My term was up, but I'm still on there. I'm emeritus, and I'm still on the board now going on 29 years. So it's very important to me because I've seen what happened to families, people around the world. Look what's going on across the world now. I mean, it's incredible. And we're seeing the same exact stuff happening. And to happen in this world today is terrible. I wish I was younger again. I'd go in the army and join the army. I'm being serious. So I was very lucky, and it was the information I've seen and what we've done at the Holocaust Museum. It's the most credible museum you'll ever see. It really is. Not just because I was involved with it and still am. And then I built a building for the research and scholars. Also, that's another called the Chappelle Center. That's another building I built for them. So it was my pleasure. And it was really, I used to get involved with Elie Wiesel. I mean, just some of the people I met and listened to the stories. It's incredible when you hear all this stuff. And the survivors, what they've done. It's amazing what the survivors from the Holocaust have done. Most of them have passed away because of age. But really, it's an incredible story. You're bringing tears to my eyes. I'm being serious.
Look, it's important. I think, you brought it up with what's going on in Ukraine. And I think this is the power. This is the power of story on display, that someone could be listening to our discussion now that is either, in the prime of their career, a young person, an educator, a parent, that says, you know what, maybe I could be doing more, or maybe they want to learn more about history or sort of why things operate. Why does the clock work the way that it does, right? Let's open up that watch in that regard. And I think you're a fantastic guide in the story of your life. And I think we can learn a lot from that. Let's close with this, Gerry. What do you think the lesson is? There's so many young people. I recently spoke to students at a boarding school in Switzerland, American students, and everything about them was about experiencing, embracing cultural diversity, entrepreneurship,
Right.
like collaborating. It just was emanating from their discussion. And I'm wondering what the lesson is about your life. Your life is far from over. You got a lot going on. What is the lesson for a young person thinking about what they can accomplish, what they can envision and or hope? The Converse that's got a hole in it. How do we think about that today?
I'm going to be simple. Get your dream. This is your dream. Go after it. Don't stop. Make it happen. And it will happen. The average person doesn't do that. The average person should have been this or that. Do it. And you will really be a better person. And that was very interesting because when I got that award at NYU at Madison Square Garden, as I said, welcome to the house that Gerry built to 17,000 kids. That was very rewarding.
Thanks for taking the plunge into HeadRoom, where we uncover the why behind the what and who impacting our lives. HeadRoom is a production of Rainlight and co-produced by our friends at Old Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and this is HeadRoom.